the Watergate Hotel.
Mr. Reagan.
All right, before we start, I've got a great new sponsor for the show, Gold Co. If you want to diversify your portfolio, protect your savings, safeguard your retirement, try investing in gold with Gold Co. Go to MrReaganLikesGold.com or call 844-696-GOLD or click on the link in the description below. So I am in Washington, D.C. at the moment, and I was looking for a hotel to stay at, and while searching, an interesting thing happened. Up popped the Watergate Hotel. Now, when I saw this, I thought, is the Watergate Hotel still a working hotel? And it occurred to me that there's probably a lot of people out there who don't know that the Nixon/Watergate scandal was named after the Watergate Hotel. And for those who do know, I think there's probably a lot of people out there like me who didn't realize that it's still a working hotel and that you can stay there. So I thought, you know what I should do? I should book a room and I should give the people a little tour. And so here we are. I am looking out the window of my hotel room at the Watergate Hotel. I actually booked 7 nights here, and let me tell you, it wasn't as expensive as you might think. Because let me tell you guys, this is a very nice hotel. I would actually say for the money, this is probably the best hotel I have ever stayed in America. Maybe the only hotel I ever stayed in that was better was the Trump Hotel in Chicago. That hotel is amazing. But this hotel, this hotel is a top-notch hotel. And it wasn't that expensive. For 7 nights, it was about $2,000. And look, is there a hotel in America that has the same level of political history as the Watergate Hotel? I don't think so. And so the novelty of that alone, I think makes staying here quite a lot of fun. There aren't a ton of signs that you're in the infamous Watergate Hotel. They do have these pens that say, I stole this pen from the Watergate Hotel, and they have these key cards that say, no need to break in, which I think is kind of clever. I did like seeing that stuff, but it's not overt. They don't play it up. It's not tacky, you know what I mean? The hotel is very stylish. It's upscale. It's pristine. And the staff here, they are highly professional, top-notch. And the view from my room, magnificent. I don't know if that's true of every room in the hotel, but this particular room has a great view. The only thing I thought was a little bit annoying about this place is that when I went to go film, they kind of yelled at me, right? I explained to him that I was trying to do a YouTube video, but apparently he did not care. But he did give me a free tour of what they call the Scandal Room, and that was very cool. This is, of course, the room the Watergate burglars actually stayed in when they were trying to infiltrate the DNC headquarters.
The lights are off and they must be looking for a fuse box or something, because them flashlights, they're keeping me awake.
Now, the guy told me that normally visiting the room would cost me $75, but he allowed me to go in for free. But $75, that seems a little bit insane. But it is a very interesting thing to see. Now, they have remodeled the room, so it doesn't look exactly like what it looked like at the time, but they've decorated it with some 1970s era stuff to give it that kind of vintage vibe. And they had a bunch of news articles up and stuff about the Watergate scandal. And I think it was great to just walk into a room with that kind of history. This is a location that really changed the perception Americans had of their own government. What happened in that room eventually turned the entire nation against Richard Nixon.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Now, I don't believe that Richard Nixon was a bad guy. And in fact, I feel like he has been really unjustly treated. Tucker Carlson last year, he dug into a few of the reasons why he believes that Richard Nixon was unjustly persecuted. And I think he's right. Tucker believes that the Watergate scandal was basically set up by sinister actors who wanted Nixon out. Essentially, he believes that it was a deep state plot. I'm going to play you Tucker Carlson's diatribe about this in one moment. First, of course, I have to talk about my phenomenal sponsor. Because of the disastrous last 4 years, we may be in the midst of an inflation cycle like we saw in the 1970s, except this time it could possibly be far worse and far more dangerous. Ronald Reagan once said that inflation is as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber, and as deadly as a hitman. And I could not agree more. So what happened to the price of gold during the last inflation cycle of the 1970s? Well, let's just say gold was a saving grace for people who took steps to help protect their savings. That's why I want you to go to MrReaganLikesGold.com to learn about my partners over at Goldco. They are a great company, top rated, impeccable customer service. And for you, they're going to give you a free gold and silver kit where you can learn about how precious metals can help you protect your money. You can also get up to a 10% instant match in bonus silver on qualified orders. To learn more, call 844-696-GOLD or visit MrReaganLikesGold.com. That's 844-696-GOLD or visit MrReaganLikesGold.com.
Richard Nixon was taken out by the FBI and CIA with the help of Bob Woodward, who was a Washington Post reporter who had been a naval intelligence officer working in the White House, working in the Nixon White House. And then he shows up a year later, and he's this brand new reporter. He'd never been a journalist at all. He's a naval intel officer, the famous Bob Woodward we all revere. And he's at the Washington Post, and somehow he gets the biggest story in the history of the Washington Post. He's the lead guy in that story. Well, I worked at a newspaper. I've been in the news business my whole life. That is not how it works. You don't take a kid like his first day from a totally unrelated business and put him on the biggest story. But he was. He was that guy. And who is his main source for Watergate? Oh, the number 2 guy at the FBI. Oh, so you have the naval intelligence officer working with the FBI official to destroy the president. Okay, so that's a deep state coup. What else? How would you describe that? If that happened in Guatemala, what would you say? And yet the way it was framed and the way that I accepted for decades was, oh, this intrepid reporter fought power. No. This intrepid reporter, Bob Woodward, was a tool of power, secret power, which is the most threatening kind, to bounce the single most popular president in American history, Richard Nixon, from office before the end of his term and replace him with who? Oh, Gerald Ford, who sat on the Warren Commission. Now, how did Gerald Ford get to be Richard Nixon's vice president? Well, because Carl Albert, the Democrat Speaker of the House, told him, you must choose him. We will only confirm him when they sent the actual elected vice president away for tax evasion, Spiro Agnew of Maryland. So you have a complete setup, like Gerald Ford, the only unelected president in American history, actually sat on the Warren Commission. Like that happened in front of all of us, but the way it was framed cloaked the obvious reality of it. The people who broke into the Watergate office building, from which the name is taken, Watergate, I think it was 6 of them or 7 of them. All but one was a CIA employee. That's real. It's like, look it up on Google. Richard Nixon was elected by more votes than any president in American history in the 1972 election. He was the most popular by votes, which is the only way we can really measure popularity, the most popular president in his reelection campaign. And 2 years later, he's gone, undone by a naval intel officer, the number 2 guy at the FBI, and a bunch of CIA employees. You tell me what that is. Those are the facts. Those are not disputed facts. That's not crackpot shit. That's just look it up.
So why did they want to get rid of Nixon?
There are a lot of theories on that. I mean, first of all, we don't need to know motive to know what happened. They, meaning unelected federal employees, got rid of Richard Nixon, which is the most anti-democratic way to make a leadership change that there is.
Now, Joe Rogan asks Tucker here what he believes the motivation was to get Nixon out, and Tucker doesn't seem to know what that motivation would have been. He says that he doesn't need a motivation to know exactly what happened, and I actually agree with that. However, I do think it's important to know the motivation, and I personally would very much like to know. Now there is an interview with Richard Nixon in which Nixon himself speculates about this. Let's watch that clip.
I realize that there were some in the media and some in the Congress who felt that for a variety of reasons, because they had disagreed with me in Vietnam, because they thought I was too strong in terms of what I was going to do in the second term, that they felt that it was very important to get me out of there. Let me make it clear as to why they were concerned. I had not held any punches back. I made it clear after the election that with the war out of the way, having won by 62%, I had a mandate. I was going to reorganize the government. I was going to cut down on the bureaucrats. I was going to return more power to the states and the people. I was going to shape up the place. They knew that. The media knew it. The bureaucracy knew it. The elitists knew it. The establishment knew it. They didn't like it. And so under the circumstances, I can understand Why, whatever their devotion to being honorable and so forth are concerned, those partisan instincts might prevail. But in fairness, of course there were some who weren't partisan at all. They just thought I should be out because they thought I should never have been in.
No clear motive has ever been established. Why did they break in? What were they looking for? What were they intending to get out of the whole operation? The official story is that Nixon's team was trying to gain some kind of advantage in the upcoming election. But as Tucker Carlson mentioned, Nixon won in a landslide. He was possibly the most popular president in American history. So the idea that they needed to come up with some kind of extra advantage to win the election, that doesn't really add up. Tucker Carlson's alternative narrative that this was actually a plot to create a scandal in order to force Nixon out is actually a lot more plausible, given that there was no significant benefit to the break-in. Now, I don't know what could happen in the future in order to clear Richard Nixon's name, in order for the American people to reassess Nixon's place in history. Maybe a movie needs to be made, a film, a really popular film or something like that, or a television series that covers all of this, but it covers it from this other perspective that maybe Nixon was set up and ousted. There was indeed a smoking gun tape, but that tape was apparently misinterpreted by everyone.
John Dean ran the cover-up. Angelo Lano, the lead FBI agent, he's asked, what about the involvement in the cover-up? What about John Dean? And he says, I credit him with 95% of the cover-up activities. Out of nowhere in 2014, he publishes lots of books, all on Watergate. He publishes one in 2014 called The Nixon Defense. And at page 54 in his book, there's a footnote. And the footnote says, the smoking gun tape that drove Nixon out of office, that's been misunderstood from the beginning. It was really an effort to not have the FBI interview two people who might reveal the donation of significant contributions to creep by Democrats, by very prominent Democrats. So what appears to be Nixon agreeing to using the CIA to cover up the break-in is nothing of the sort. Nixon agreed to use the CIA to protect the testimony against two prominent Democrats. If Nixon had known this when this tape came out, when the tape was first heard, he might have lived to fight another day. Those are quotes at the bottom of the page. He might have lived to fight another day. In short, the smoking gun was shooting blanks. Okay, here's the guy who's at the absolute center of the alleged wrongdoing, saying it's all been a mistake.
Now that was an amazing interview that Tucker did with Jeff Shepard. If you want to know all the real details of the Watergate scandal, I highly suggest watching that interview. It's a long one, but it is well worth it. Now, since Watergate, the Democrat Party has proven themselves utterly corrupt. From spying on Donald Trump's campaign in 2016 to the seemingly infinite attacks on Trump and his supporters over the years, it seems that the left maintains no ethical barriers to their actions. They will do anything legal or illegal to gain and keep power. Now, with the new administration, and especially with Elon Musk's Doge initiative, it looks like much of their corruption is finally going to be exposed. I, for one, cannot wait to see all of the deep-rooted corruption in the federal government exposed, incinerated, and those who have engaged in this corruption sent to prison. And I am particularly looking forward to Jeffrey Epstein's client list finally being made public.
Jeffrey Epstein is dead, and Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for 20 years where she belongs. And if people in that report are still fighting to keep their names private, Sean, they have no legal basis to do so unless they're a child, a victim, or a cooperating defendant by some chance against some potential case against Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think Mark Garagos, as a great criminal defense attorney, will back that up as well.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this little tour of the Watergate Hotel. I highly recommend it. That's it from me. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.